Good evening, and first of all, thank you, Paula, for this invitation to this auspicious gathering this evening. And I'm sure it's no accident you selected the speakers for this evening, because we're all gonna be backing up and supporting each other in our thoughts here. And I wanted to begin by jumping off or piggybacking on what Heather just said. This idea that where we are right now is I think the beginning of a turning point. And this this is why it's so uncomfortable. What's that saying? It's always darkest before the dawn, right? So I believe we as humanity are getting ready to make another collective evolutionary consciousness jump. And when we get to that point, it's frightening, and those who don't want to make that jump with us, we resist and don't want to let go of the old ways of being. So here we're at choice point. But here's the interesting paradox about this time, because we're always in paradoxes. And I'm going to say a paradox that it's going to simultaneously bring you comfort and distress. It will be a paradox within a paradox. And it is this time right here, right now, is so vitally important, and it doesn't matter. Let me say that again. This time, this moment, vitally important, and it ultimately doesn't matter. Here's why it doesn't matter. The evolution of consciousness is gonna happen, whether we get on board or not. It's gonna happen. We have no control over it, and consciousness spirals upwards. The evolution of our consciousness is always spiraling upwards. Okay, if we don't believe it, we got to take the long view. Look at how we've evolved as human beings over the last 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years. We've always progressed towards equality and equanimity. And we're doing it faster. Think of how much we've accomplished and transformed in the last 100 years versus the 500 before that, right? So we may be already aware of this, and unfortunately, this is where it gets tempting to just sit back, not engage, do the spiritual bypass. We say it's in God's hands, or it's God's will. For those of us more spiritual leaning, it's in divine order. This is how it's supposed to unfold. We don't have to do anything. But here's the thing. We progress as we have because of the choices that we make at times like these. And this is why it is vitally important for us to be engaged. We always talk about how do we bring peace, love, justice, all these divine qualities into the world, right? So divine qualities, God qualities, guess what? They show up through and as us. We are God made manifest. We are in the embodiment of the divine. If we don't do it, it's not getting done. We're it. But how it begins with our individual shadow work. We have to do the shadow work. Right now, I'm wrapping up a talk series based on Gary Zukav's book, Spiritual Partnership. Gary Zukov should be a familiar name to many of you. Seed of the Soul, before that, the Dancing Woolly Masters. So he has a book called Spiritual Partnership. And what he talks about is that what happens to us as human beings is that things happen in our lives and the frightened parts of us get triggered. When the frightened parts of us get triggered, we react from there. And I don't know if you've noticed, but when we react from fear, it never ends well for anyone. This is why we have the scourge that is systemic racism and white supremacy in our country, because for hundreds of years, one group of people were taught to devalue and be afraid of another group of people. That second group, people who have skin color looking like me. And we're taught to be afraid of us and react aggressively and violently towards us, which makes us afraid. We see this today in the police brutality issues that are happening. And when we are afraid, then we don't act smartly, and we caught in this cycle of fear. So the spiritual work begins by first addressing the frightened parts of ourselves, all of us. This is why I say dismantling racism is a spiritual job. It is spiritual work, not just moral work. It is spiritual work, because then we begin to move from this cycle of fear into this expansion of love. Mm-hmm. And begins with us doing our individual shadow work first. We can't, it's weird. Here's the other paradox. It only happens collectively when we do it individually, right? Because we're all caught in that cycle, and it hurts everyone. The oppressors, the victims, everyone is hurt. So we've got to first look at ourselves and do the work. And here's what's important to know about this. And this is part of the other kind of going back to the why it doesn't matter sort of deal. We do our work and we begin to heal. And many of us right now are feeling, some of us, I should say, are feeling, if we elect a certain person as president in a few weeks, that we can breathe again and we can all be relieved. I'll remind you that the current president we have did not create this experience we're in. He didn't create it. He's a product of it. He became the embodiment and the face and the voice of it. And for that, I am very grateful, because it allowed everyone to see that this shadow is still there. So we shouldn't get in the idea thought of, oh, if we elect the other person, all right, whew, it's done. No, our work as spiritual beings in this transformative journey is gonna be the same the day before the election, the day on the election, and the day after the election. Our work doesn't end with an election, or because that shadow is still there asking to be healed. And we have to do the healing work with ourselves first. So in that paradox, that both and sort of situation, here's what I want to invite you to do. First, ask yourselves, who do you want to be? A person grounded in fear or grounded in love? If you want to be grounded in love, you have to explore these frightened parts of yourself. You have to heal them. Educate yourself about implicit bias. Engage in spiritual practices that build that consciousness of harmony and peace and forgiveness within yourself. Remember to take care of yourself. This is a marathon, not a sprint. We're not going to fix it all in maybe some of our lifetimes. We're not going to heal it. It took us a long time to get here. And yes, we are doing things faster, but it's going to take a while to turn it around as well. And then ask yourself, who do you want us to be as a nation? One that continues to have different standards for different people, or one that is grounded in equality and equanimity for all? I don't know if you can see my shirt, but it says we're all children of the same universe, which simply means we are in this together. So we either going to heal and save ourselves together, or are we going to continue to suffer together? So engage your spiritual self, but also engage your action self. Go vote. I'm going to trust everyone on this call today is registered to vote, and you're going to go vote. You're going to find a lane, I like to call it finding your lane, in which you can do the work to help shift things, whether it's donate to organizations, whether it's get out and march, whether it's write letters to your congressman, whether it's help a person who needs help. Find your lane. And the last piece, which is back to that paradox, release all attachment to the outcome. Release all attachment to the outcome, because when we become attached to outcomes, that's when the fear kicks in. Release attachment to the outcome, knowing, to get back to where he started, that consciousness is evolving and it will work itself out as we work ourselves out. So I'm so glad that I'm here with all of you, because I know on some level you think and believe the same way, and you are the transformation that this world needs. Thank you.